Jason. Thank you so much. Thank you all for welcoming the two of us. I want to start by talking about the last year and a half of your life. You moved down here to LA. You take over a 100-year-old media company. You show up and massively disrupt it. And then in the last few weeks, you and your company have now been disrupted. How do you feel?
That's a great start.
How do you feel?
How do I feel? Probably the best place to start is if you were to ask an 8-year-old kid in Pittsburgh, hey, how would you feel about someday running one of the two most important storytelling companies on the planet? That kid would be thrilled. And so the short answer, and I don't mean to be pithy, is that the last year and a half have been among the most fulfilling of my entire life on a professional basis. And I expect a follow-up, so
yeah,
let's
I mean,
go
like,
there.
I feel you, but like, that's kind of like romantic and corny and nice, but like, you're feeling so fulfilled and inspired and pursuing your dream, but kind of punched in the gut, no?
Yeah, make no mistake, Steph, I would far prefer this adventure to go on for 10, 20 years. There's no doubt about that. But that's not the way that corporate America works. So of the things I can control, and there's been a lot, thankfully, over the last year and a half, going on 2 years early next year, a lot's gone right. And so again, of the things I can control, nothing but good feelings. But to your question of, well, geez, how do you feel about, everything in terms of the last several months? Yeah, it's hard. There's no doubt about it.
What's amazing to me that you can control, you can say, take this job and shove it. You can say, for the rest of the year, I'm going to show up to work every day and just watch movies at my desk and never answer the phone. But you're not. When you and I were talking over the last hour, you are in Europe. You are in 15 different cities across the United States. You are bang, bang, bang. You are talking about the future of a company that you might not be part of. Why are you doing that? You're not making money for you. You're doing it for somebody else. Well,
I'm doing it for the same reason that the 30,000 people at WarnerMedia largely do what they do, which is we're missionaries. So you're
Nobody
right.
thinks a media CEO.
No, hold on. Let me push you on that. Honestly, and for anybody that knows me well, this will not come off as anything what it is at face value, which is our mission is really simple but really hard, which is to move the world through story. And all my life, for some reason, there's this great saying that somebody I know once told me. He's like, Jason, your passions pick you. You do not pick your passions. And for whatever reason, that kid in Pittsburgh, storytelling picked me. And so the reason why I show up and do what I do is because I am missionary about this. And by the way, I'm not the only one. There's 30,000 people at WarnerMedia that feel the same way.
But that kid from Pittsburgh, right? I follow your Twitter feed, who kind of is nostalgic and romantic about old Hollywood, dreams of Warner Brothers. You have this job, but you're the tech disruptor who's crushing the box office, who's taking me out of the movie theater.
So it's an easy narrative, Steph, but what I'd push you on is, what's the best and most important thing that I can do as a leader to set WarnerMedia up for the next 100 years?
Get me to watch stuff where I am.
And I'd argue it's what we're doing. I'd absolutely argue that you have to take a company that has a 98-year history of being a wholesaler in analog channels and actually become a service that proudly serves customers directly, digitally, in addition to movie theaters, yes, in addition to linear channels across 400 million homes every month. That's the right thing to do. I'm not saying change is easy, but it's the right thing to do.
And you in this role are the person to do it. You get to say, we're moving in a new direction, we're setting new rules. But one thing that you can or maybe should do when you're changing the rules is say to all the players, hey guys, hey ladies, I'm changing the rules.
Yes.
That's not what you did when you came in and made a big switch to taking movies, releasing in the theater, and streaming that day. Did you make a mistake in the way you executed a plan that you had every right to change?
So we endeavored to do the right thing in terms of communication, but I will be the first one to say, and the responsibility rests on my shoulders, that in hindsight, we should have taken the better part of a month to have over 170 conversations, which is the number of participants that are in our 2021 film slate. We tried to do that in a compressed period of time, less than a week, because of course there was going to be leaks, there was going to be everybody opining on whether we should do this or not do this. And again, change is hard, but to your question, our intentions were very, very good. We said from the start that we were going to treat every single film as though it were a blockbuster from an economic perspective for participants, that we were going to be fair and generous, and we were going to do the right thing. And the good news is we did, and we worked our tail ends off to do that. And we're now in a very good situation.
Okay, and do you deserve more credit than that?
Oh.
Right? No, but I mean, a year and a half ago, a lot of people in this room didn't have a relationship with HBO Max. We didn't even know how to find it.
Yeah.
And now, yes, it was a very bumpy start,
Yeah.
but you're rocking in our houses. And so do you not get credit for the fact that it's working?
I think the minute you start looking for credit, you're going to be a very lonely person professionally.
Really, there's a lot of CEOs who love the credit.
Well, again, change is hard, and if you believe in what you're doing, and I can tell you we believe in what we're doing, the credit figures itself out over the long term. It's never been something that I've been focused on. Thankfully, the senior team at WarnerMedia is not worried about it. And you're right, it's working. It's working really well. I can tell you what feels really good is to have so much wind in the sails at WarnerMedia. That was not the case 4 or 5 years ago in terms of being positioned for the future.
But even now, for all the people there, how hard is it to know who's the boss, what direction you're going in, right? Like there's a sense of exhaustion and frazzled team members who have gone through a lot over the last few years and still are, as they're working from home, going, which direction and who's the boss?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of clarity right now. And that's, again, one of the reasons why I do love what I do, which is I get to come in every day, provide that vision, provide the context, because the context is every bit as much important as the vision, and to provide that stability. And so I can't promise that there won't be change in the future for all the things that you're referring to. But what I can do is that until this transaction closes, make sure that we show up every day, do what we need to do, and set WarnerMedia up for the next 100 years.
Well, set it up for the next year. You are showing up every
100
day.
years.
Okay, but just take me to the next year, because you're showing up every day, leaving it on the field. You're doing it at a time when Netflix is saying, we just heard it right here on this stage yesterday, we're going to spend $18 billion with a B on content next year.
We're investing more than that this year in cash across the WarnerMedia enterprise.
And will you next year?
Yes.
How much?
I'm not, going to, share. Ish. North of 18, both this year and next year.
Wow.
Yes.
Netflix also now getting involved in gaming, something you've already been involved in.
Yes.
Is gaming now part of the streaming war?
I don't know if it's part of this. I would be surprised if there's anybody beyond Netflix that suddenly jumps into that pool, at least in the near term. We've been in that pool since 2004, and proudly so. And so we have north of 2,000 world-class software developers, game developers, and we've got an intellectual property sandbox that people would give their left arm for. And so the ability to play games at Hogwarts, as long as you have an internet-connected screen with any friend across the globe, that's the stuff that we're in the middle of. And so I feel very, very, I have a lot of conviction about the future for any world-class storytelling company is going to be far more than just movies and television series and documentaries. I think it's going to be interactive. I think it's going to be games. And in our case, it's also going to be news and sports. 10
years from now, whether it's WarnerMedia or other, show us what do media companies look like? What?
I think there's going to be less of them. I think there'll be a relatively short list of truly scaled global companies. They will be as good at product and technology as they will be at storytelling. That is a dramatic change from the landscape you see today. So I think that's what the world looks like in 10 years.
Who will they be?
Well, I'm biased, but if you were to ask me as of today, I think that Netflix, of course, is very well positioned. Disney is well positioned. And I feel that WarnerMedia, as you look at it today, is incredibly well positioned. I'm setting aside Apple and Amazon because they have many, many different businesses. But in terms of storytelling, I think it's hard to argue against those three companies.
What about Amazon and Apple? in terms of massively powerful companies that don't have the storied history that obviously Warner does, or even Disney. Where do you think they're going? I mean, you personally have a long professional history with Amazon. You were one of those first 7 people in the room. So now when you look at Amazon and their pillars of business, do you see Amazon Studios as one of them, or is it a super cool passion thing for Jeff?
So I was on the senior team. I was in the first 7 people, but I was on the
yes,
senior
sorry.
team in the senior leadership team room. I think that if you look at Jeff Bezos and now Andy Jassy and the culture and the DNA of Amazon, they're not short-term in orientation. They're very much focused on the long term. So I don't see them exiting the media business. So I think they're committed to the long term. They're a learning organization. They're very focused. They're very high judgment, and so I don't think they're going away. I don't think this is a hobby, to use Steve Jobs' kind of old statement about Apple TV.
Could you give us a peek inside Amazon for the average person? We don't know Andy.
Right.
We think of him as who's that guy? Yet he's been there for 20 plus years.
Yes.
Do you think we're going to see a big change in the company, how it's run, and what will Jeff's footprint look like? As an outsider now, obviously, but somebody who knows the place much better than we do.
Andy, to put it bluntly, is incredible. Like I know Andy very well. He's incredibly high judgment. He's incredibly thoughtful, and he happens to share the same values and principles as Jeff. And I think that is going to result in a company that has continuity, that has consistency. And so I wouldn't bet against Andy at all. And by the way, Jeff is not, it's not like he's moving to outer space. He's still obviously in the boardroom, and he's still a big part of the company and the cap table. But Amazon.
But that's hard to run a business for Andy when you have Jeff not in outer space.
But you should ask Andy. So Andy's run.
Andy, you're welcome to join me for an interview if he's listening.
So Andy's run a very big business at Amazon already called Amazon Web Services, and he has had tremendous latitude in doing so because he's deserved that trust from Jeff. So I don't think that you're going to suddenly see a difference in how Jeff treats Andy. I think Andy's fully empowered to run the company.
I keep hearing you talk about things, long-term plans, not a short-term player. Do you feel for yourself then a level of disappointment or frustration that you're not going to potentially get to play this long game at Warner, something you know and love?
Well, I'm human, so yes is the short answer in the context of being CEO of WarnerMedia. That job goes away, obviously, once the transaction closes. So of course, there's definitely, I meant it when I said it earlier that, going on 2 years here in a short bit, it has been the most fulfilling stretch of my career. And I've been really blessed between the founding CEO of Hulu and all the craziness of that, being a part of Amazon when it was a private company and then went public and became something that mattered. I'm incredibly blessed. And so even with that, to know that the last kind of year and a half plus, going on 2 years, it's been a remarkable experience. And so yes, of course, there'll be a feeling of loss when that role goes away.
When you think about Hulu, when you ran that company, I mean, it had multiple different owners who were no friends of one another. Now you're in the house of Disney. How much easier would it be to run? Excuse me. How much easier would it be to run Hulu today?
I think a lot easier. I'm not in Hulu, and I haven't been in Hulu for quite some time.
But knowing what it was like then, and trying to run a company with all of those opposing forces.
Yeah, it was a trick. That Hulu exists is a bit of a miracle, and that it thrives, and I think is valued at somewhere around $50 billion, depending on who you talk to. It's a big testament to the team, and it's a big testament to the people that backed it, when candidly it wasn't very popular to believe in streaming and believe in a little service called Hulu. People made fun of it literally from day one, but now that it is on the path to being a singular entity owned by one company in Disney, I think things get a little bit simpler, and simple is good when it comes to business.
We're living in the opposite of simple in the world of streaming.
Yes.
Do you think it is going, and I know we talk about there'll be less studios, but is it going to simplify, right? Like, let's go to our living room.
Yes.
In order for me to watch White Lotus, it takes 6 different functions, and I have to call 2 of my children so I can figure out how to get it on my television, and then I can't change the TV for 6 days.
Yes.
Do you see any of that getting easier anytime soon? Like, what remote control do you have in your house? Because I'm looking for it.
So, a couple things. One is, it's not going to get better tomorrow, but
Doesn't that seem crazy? We have the greatest technology ever, we have the greatest content ever, and like, if you're over the age of 40, you can't watch my parents cannot watch television at this point.
It will get to the point, and by the way, for the people that were raised on radio, they said the same thing with the introduction of television in the 1950s. They thought that they could never, ever, ever operate a television set. So, but what I will say is that we're in probably pretty close to the peak of streaming services from an investment cycle perspective, in that I think it's probably unsustainable for a number of the players to continue to invest at the levels they are, which means that there will be a refactoring most likely, and there will be less players that ultimately get to scale, which is very, very important in a fixed cost business with very low marginal distribution costs. So what that means is, going back to the 1950s, there will be a short number of services that you'll care about and use on a daily basis, and that will be when your living room experience with a remote becomes very, very simple.
Could they get bundled back into, here's my service provider, just watching the television?
Well, you're seeing that happen a little bit already. There's this famous quote that says there's 2 ways to make money in business: bundle and unbundle. And so there's a bit of a bundling going on. If you look at the Disney Plus bundle with Hulu, Disney Plus, and ESPN Plus, that's a bundling. Whereas a couple of years ago, there was only individual a la carte services. So the great thing for consumers is consumers are going to be empowered to make the choice that's best for them. That was never the case in the last 40 years of television. So I'm very proud, along with the great crew of people across Hulu and WarnerMedia, that we're actually moving the industry towards something that's much better for consumers, which is to empower consumers to vote with their clicks and their taps, and to have accountability on us as storytellers, as service providers, to earn the loyalty each and every day. That is a tremendous pressure, but boy, is it healthy.
Then talk about the premium, phenomenal content on HBO Max, because over this last year and a half, while there have been all of these great shows, but truthfully, many of which people can't find, don't know where it is, they're frustrated, more and more have gravitated to HBO Max and said, you're my place, tell me what to watch, there's so much good stuff here.
Yeah. So this is where I get to gush about the team that I get to work with. So you will not find better creative executives in this industry and in this world than folks like Casey Bloys and Channing Dungey, Franny and Nora and Amy and Toby and the whole crew. These are people that have honed their craft over decades, and they are so good at what they do that the world's best storytellers seek them out. And that's hard to do. And we are so blessed because we get to be the team that welcomes them, and they choose every day to come in and work with us, and obviously storytellers decide to work with them. It is one of the greatest kicks of my job, is that I get to be a part of that. And when something like Mayor of Easttown happens, or Hacks, or White Lotus, or the Friends reunion, or Godzilla vs. Kong, or it goes on and on, all in 2021, then you know that we're actually doing pretty good against our mission, which is to move the world through story.
Is this unbelievable moment in storytelling, right? When you think about shows like Mayor of Easttown, like White Lotus, these are shows that not that long ago would never have been greenlit. Extraordinary, complicated shows with either entirely unlikable characters or just very, very flawed ones.
Yeah, so I completely agree with you that these would not be greenlit 20 years ago in a broadcast-centric sensibility, and even a lot of those shows would not be greenlit for cable television. But here's the great thing about streaming and the diversified business that we have, because keep in mind, we serve over 400 million people linearly, and we're serving about 67 million people right now digitally. And that number is, of course, growing very, very fast, faster than anyone else in the US. that allows you to take creative chances that you could not historically. And so that's what I get so excited about, a world where you are proudly investing tens of billions of dollars in stories and storytellers, and knowing that it's not always going to hit the bullseye, but if you look at the hit rate, there is nobody better in the industry than HBO and HBO Max in terms of hit rates, in terms of dollars that are invested in stories.
The cachet of HBO, the content, has always been the most envied.
Yes.
Has that cachet been diluted at all now that it's sort of bundled, combined with other channels?
Not one bit. I'm glad you asked this question, and I'm going to use an analogy. Has Marvel or Pixar been in any way diminished because it's a part of the Disney Plus architecture? The answer is no, not at all. In fact, because of Disney Plus, more capital can be invested in Marvel storytelling, both cinematically and also in series. The same thing is happening at HBO. We have never invested more in HBO as a sensibility and as a studio than we are literally right now in 2021. That sits alongside Max Originals, alongside DC, alongside Harry Potter, within the architecture of HBO Max. And so it's no different. And so to your question, based on filmmaker relationships, showrunner relationships, writer relationships, absolutely not. We're seeing more now than we ever have historically. And I would argue it's because of HBO Max. Like White Lotus is a great example. That is an amazing HBO studio show. More people watch it on HBO Max than watch it on HBO linearly. And that's for a service that did not exist 16 months ago.
That is an achievement.
Yep.
What, over the course of this last year and a half, what piece of content are you most proud of? That you're
So I'm going to go into dangerous
watch.
territory.
Do
I'm
it.
going to go into dangerous territory because I love all my children, and but I will tell you that as a product of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and a very harsh accent that I have lost over the years, Mayor of Easttown is something I'm very proud to be associated with. I think it's some of the finest storytelling of the past decade. I think Brad Inglesby is a genius, and the layering and the characters that he created for that series, I can't thank him enough. And the cast and crew. There's Kate Winslet, there's the rest of the crew, but that is something that there's so much to be excited about if you're in my seat. As someone from Pennsylvania, that one hit home particularly.
Then what are you excited about in the year ahead?
Oh, there's an LA Lakers show coming, and it's coming in Q1, and it is hilarious, it is dramatic, it is bonkers. It's about the LA Lakers circa 1979 when they just drafted Magic Johnson, and it's got all the things that you want in an amazing story, which is tension, crazy magnetic personalities, drugs, sex, professional sports. I think a lot of people are going to be talking about our LA Lakers show in Q1.
What do you want to do Q1?
I want to keep leading WarnerMedia, which is what I'll be doing in Q1.
When you think about truly what do you want to do next, and you're obviously not going to say it's going to be Y. What would you like? What are you saying? This is where I want to go. This not the name of the business. What do you want to do?
So, Steve Jobs gave this amazing graduation speech at Stanford where he said, when you're 22 or 21 looking out ahead, don't bother trying to predict how the thread is connected in terms of it all working out. It's only when you get to a certain point that you can look backwards that you can see that there was a reason for all of it. And I would say that all of my experiences currently at WarnerMedia, building Hulu with an amazing team over the years, helping Amazon to go from a small private company to something that really matters, and originally working at Disney back in the day, for some reason, I am so motivated and moved by using story and technology to have a big impact, a big positive impact on this world. So I can't tell you what the next 10 years are going to be about, but I predict that the combination of storytelling and technology is absolutely going to be at the heart of what I choose to do. For me, it's not work. It's very, very hard, but it's not work.
You also have great expertise in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Predictions?
I think it's going to be a tough year. I think Ben's elbow surgery is having a bigger negative impact on him than anybody thought. So I think it's going to be a tough year.
And lastly, I did solicit questions, and we got one from a fellow University of Pennsylvania freshman parent.
Okay.
You have a daughter who's a freshman there, who wanted me to ask, what was sort of your worst experience this year? Was it that your daughter convinced you to lay down hardwood flooring in a freshman dorm 2 weeks ago? And why would you have made a decision like that?
So here's the context. I got to provide context for everybody that's wondering about this question. So Jeff Shell, who runs NBC Universal, is a fellow parent of a freshman at University of Pennsylvania.
Most people unpack their kids' stuff, maybe build a loft.
Yeah.
You put down hardwood flooring in a dorm room last week?
Not at my choice. It was my daughter's roommate's decision to get fake hardwood flooring and assign me to do it. And so Jeff Shell and I have quite the text thread between us, between our two daughters at University of Pennsylvania, including sore backs from laying down fake flooring from Home Depot. But no, that's an unexpected confluence of events that neither of us ever expected. As you can imagine, Jeff and I run into each other at various industry events, and we just so happened to realize, oh my God, both of our daughters are applying to the same school. And thankfully, they both got in, and now we have two amazing daughters.
Saw each other at Home Depot getting flooring.
Picking up flooring.
We are out of time, but we have time if we have an audience question. All right.
Hey, Jason, Tammy Franklin, how are you?
Hi, Tammy.
I'm with Marsh McClellan. HBO has been known for having some really great shows with diverse casts, right? I mean, you start with The Wire, it's a lot of stuff. Talk to me a little bit about your process, the couple of years you've been there, in terms of greenlighting some shows that sell some stories from a really ethnically diverse perspective.
I'm thankful for the question because this is something that we have invested so much time in this and energy in this and heart into this, which is we feel very strongly that the stories we choose to tell need to reflect the audiences that we serve. We also feel strongly that the team we hire and develop and promote needs to reflect the audiences we serve. And you don't get there through lip service, and it takes a daily effort, and it takes system level thinking. And so I'm very, very proud of how the last year and a half has gone to that effect. If you take a look at the number of diverse filmmakers we have on the 2021 Warner Brothers slate, it's our most diverse filmmaking crew that we've ever had in our history. And thank you for the compliment about the series side of the shop, which I'd argue is probably more diverse than anyone else in the industry. So, but there's so much more to do, but I'm very proud of our focus and the system we have in place, but there's a lot more to come.
Can you dish on anything that's coming out that we don't know about yet?
Oh God, there's so much coming out. The LA Lakers story is fantastically diverse. I cannot wait for people to see that, because in addition to being an unbelievable comedy and drama, it's also an example of fantastic diverse storytelling, both behind and in front of the camera.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Rich Radden, co-CEO of Zephyr, Jason. I just want to say, first of all, thank you. Thank you for changing something in this town that hasn't been changed ever, which was having the courage and bravery to take things out of the theatrical window. And I'm a consumer. Just from a consumer's perspective, just thank you for that. Secondly, Rich Greenfield just texted me. He had a question, but I've got one as well. So his question is, are you destroying the DVD window? You've announced for 2022, there's a 45-day window, and then you're going to push to HBO Max. Is that going to continue past 2022? That's his question. My question is a little bit more personal. You were hired by, I believe, John Stanky at AT&T, or whoever it was at AT&T, who are basically outsiders to this industry town. Do you think, given all the change and the innovation you brought and that mindset, you would have been hired by anybody inside of this town if AT&T had never owned a media company?
That's a fascinating question. I will tell you that we got Hulu going because of someone that is the ultimate insider, Peter Chernin, felt strongly about myself being in the middle of Hulu. And so Peter was a founding board member of Hulu. Jeff Zucker was a founding board member of Hulu. And so I would say that was the definition of sort of insiders and traditional executives inside Hollywood. And so the fact that, kind of we all work together and work together really, really well, I think is a testament to not many people, probably are willing to take that jump, but some people are. So it'd be tough for me to prognosticate.
When you did your blog post, did he stand up? Because that blog post was amazing. It was like, this is the future, people. I can't help you if you can't see the future. Did Peter Chernin stand? Because I know everybody in town was like, we want to kill this guy, Jason Kilar, who just told us what the future was. We don't like it. Consumers will watch it when we say, how we say, and what we like. It was pretty dramatic, right? So he was there for you in that time.
Well, Peter had left the building, unfortunately, because he
gosh.
went to go start an investment company and a production company. But I will say that Bob Iger, I think if he were here, he had my back.
Got it.
And it's not surprising because Bob, I think of all the executives at that time, probably had an ability to see around the corner a lot better than most. And so,
Yeah.
But to your comment about change, I do want to give props to the team because it's a 30,000 person team. And it literally takes all of them to pivot and to do things in a very different way where historically they were wholesalers. And now in addition to all the linear and analog distribution, they're also serving customers directly. And we just grew revenues 31% last quarter. That doesn't happen in a company like ours. And so it's working. And to Rich Greenfield's question about DVDs, I think people are going to buy DVDs if they want to buy DVDs, but there's no doubt that we're leaning into additional ways that we put our stories in front of consumers, and streaming is absolutely the first window right after theatrical for those movies in 2022.
What is a DVD, by the way? I don't even know. Rich can explain it to me. Anyway,
Digital
thank
video
you.
disc.
They have them at Blockbuster. Then before we go, when you mentioned the blog post, you are doing something and have been doing something very few other leaders do. You put yourself out there. You put yourself out there with the blog, with social media. You have that presence at a time when so many others are really locking down because the risk of putting yourself out there in many ways has never been greater. Why have you taken a different route?
The answer to that one is my mom and dad. I think they taught me that you only go around this rodeo once. And going back to something I said earlier, change is hard. So if I can provide context, both internally and externally, via social media, via lots and lots of internal communication, I think that makes it easier for people. Because under the best of circumstances, change is very, very hard for us humans.
But if they know who you are and you're consistent.
If they know who you are, if you endeavor to make kind choices, if you provide context, if you explain very candidly the pros and the cons, what could go wrong, what could go right, and just give people the confidence in your leadership. That's the way I was taught. That's the way my mom and dad taught me in Pittsburgh.
Kind choices. What a takeaway. Jason, thank you. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it.